Hello and welcome to Best Sips Worldwide. I'm your drinking companion, Susan Schwartz, an American travel writer living in London. Thanks to my mother's love of martinis, the first words I spoke were shaken, not stirred, and I've been obsessed by the history of cocktails ever since. Through the years, I've been lucky enough to sip some of the best made by the best. Hear that sound? It's time to cozy up to the bar and let me introduce you to the movers and shakers of the world's most famous watering holes. Meeting in Chotto Matte, the busy Soho restaurant, my guest this week, Fabiano Latham, who was previously bar manager there, gives me a crash course on Pisco and its accompaniment, Nikkei cuisine, which has taken London by storm. How did he fall in love with this sexy Peruvian import? I'll let him tell you.
A lot of people come here and they say, oh, it's a Japanese restaurant, or it's a Japanese fusion restaurant, which, there's a million of in London. And I always try and get my point across that we are doing something different, or we're focusing on a different element of Peruvian cuisine.
And that's Nikkei.
Yeah, so the word Nikkei originally is a name given to Japanese descendants of the migrants that moved there. There have been a few waves of Japanese going over to South America and settling in Mexico and Brazil and Peru, but loads of them went to Peru towards the late 1800s. Because they thought from Japan, it was like there was an industrial revolution and there was a war and there was like a samurai period, and I think like a whole bunch of them just had enough and they were like, let's go somewhere else. I heard Peru was like paved with gold. People were like, oh, that sounds great. And so loads of them sort of were farming, particularly for sugarcane. There's a whole bunch of like Japanese barbers that opened up in Lima.
I guess everyone needed their haircut.
Absolutely, and Japanese have very cool hair, so that's why. And yeah, a whole bunch of people went back to Japan, but loads of people stayed, and then now it's just become a part of everyday cuisine. Their influence on the cuisine that happens. So you can see things like, for example, in ceviche, the way the fish cut, it's almost like a clean cut sashimi. There's tiridito as well, which is a similar slice. There's a whole bunch of sushi as well in Peru, which is all Nikkei inspired. There's also chifa or chufa, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, which is the Chinese influence, which I think is why Peruvian cuisine is sort of being recognized now as such a gastronomical sort of explosion, because there's so many different elements that help shape it.
And this has kind of been introduced to London over the last, I would say, maybe 3 years.
I think a lot longer, but people didn't really know what it was. Like Nobu, he does a whole bunch of Nikkei stuff, but he never really shouted about it. He was all like, yeah, it's Japanese.
Well, it's definitely being shouted about now. And
it's
one of the busiest restaurants in London. Now, how did that influence your drinks? Because you are a bartender. We're talking cocktails here. So how is it a new thing that it's just rolled into drinks?
I think we're extremely lucky here. And when I started this job, I was like, what on earth is Nikkei? Oh my God, I have to do so much research. And then I realized we've got such a wealth of ingredients to play with, and such a rich history to look back on and draw inspiration from for making drinks. The way you prepare them, the way they're served, garnishes, everything like that. You've got Pisco, which I'm sure we're going to talk about soon. Japanese whiskey, you've got sake, you've got crazy fruits like yuzu and tamarillo, and herbs like shiso and huacatai, and all the amazing things. So for us, it's just never-ending. Sometimes you can get a bit stuck in a concept, I think, in a restaurant, and everything sounds a bit samey. But us, because we keep looking back further and finding new bits of information, we just have enormous wealth of things to draw upon to make our menus, which is awesome.
And since you brought up Pisco, let's talk about Pisco, because that's one of the major ingredients in these drinks, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, and we're trying to introduce more and more of it. But again, people really don't know what it is.
Yeah, tell us.
Okay, good.
I don't really know what it is. I like drinking it, but
I
don't know what it is.
Loads of bartenders go, yeah, I know what Pisco is. And you say, what is it? And they say, let's talk about something else. Like when we our guests, they say, oh yeah, Pisco, that's the thing with the egg white. And it's like, no, that's the Pisco Sour. But Pisco itself, I think, to answer what it is, you have to kind of go sort of where it comes from and how it came about. Because essentially, it really is just a brandy well, not just a brandy. It's a brandy. It's categorized as a fruit brandy, which, it kind of connotes images of something aged and brown swirling around in amazing balloon glass, around a fire after dinner or something. And that's great, but Pisco is definitely not that. So Pisco. Pisco is
specific to Peru, though, right? Pisco?
Yeah, we can talk about Chilean, but I might go,
Okay.
what's that?
All right.
We're going to talk about where it began, which was
Okay.
Peru. Well, so when the conquistadors went over to South America and said, "Oi, Incans, on your bike," and sort of took over everything, that whole coastal side was called the Viceroyalty of Peru. Once they were all settled and like, oh, this is nice, a nice beach, they brought with them vines from the Canary Islands to grow, like church wine, because they're very religious. And so, yeah, but they ended up growing so much wine because of the climate, and there was like this whole underground irrigation system that they had no idea about, but all these vines really took hold and just, burst. And they started going, okay, we have too much wine for our church, so let's start sending it back to Spain. So they started doing that, but it wasn't very fair on the Spanish wine dudes and dudettes, because they were like, hey, this, it's much cheaper than what we're doing. So King Philip IV, very Spanish name, said, can't do that anymore. Stop sending this stuff here. I don't want it. So the Peruvians were like, oh no, we've got all this leftover wine. What are we going to do with it? So they already had distillation, but they just started to distill more and more and more and more. And by the end of like the 1700s, Pisco was sort of surpassing wine production in Peru. That doesn't really answer what it is, though. But I did mention it.
Well, now we know it comes from a grape.
There you go.
All right.
It comes from 8 grapes.
8 grapes.
8
Okay.
specific grapes, yeah. So as I mentioned, it's a brandy, but it's got very specific rules what it is to be a Pisco. First one is it's distilled straight to bottling strength. So sometimes, most of the time, a lot of the time, you would distill, 60, 70, 80, 90%, and then cut it back down with water to your desired strength. But they just go straight to the bottling strength. So, between 38 and 45%-ish. Which means you're not allowed to add water. You're not allowed to add any sugar. You're not allowed to age it in anything reactive like wood or something like that. Anything that can change the flavor. It has to be the pure essence of its raw products, which I think is great, because for me personally, I love products that taste like what they're made from. Good old aged whiskey is fantastic, but for me, I find light spirits more exciting. You have to leave it to rest for 3 months, because as I discovered in Peru, when it comes straight off the still, it's like, oh my god, what's that? It's just really volatile. But you can leave it to rest for anything up to sort of 2 to 3 years.
And it gets less volatile.
Yeah, it kind of chills out. Just sits there like, okay, I'm chilling. But that's in glass or plastic. I think they use plastic a lot. It doesn't look very nice. You go there like, what? This is Pisco? What's that? So the 8 grapes are split into 2 categories. First one is aromatic, and the second one is non-aromatic. Maybe I could say the 4 ones. The aromatic ones are called Italia, Moscatel, Torrentel, and I don't have notes here at all, Albilla. And they are fantastic, super potent, aromas, as the name suggests. And then the non-aromatic ones are Quebranta, Moya, Negro Corriente, my Spanish is rubbish, and Uvina. And those grapes can be made into 3 different types of Pisco, so there's lots of different maths. The first one is a Puro. I sound weird with rolling my R's, I'm not going to do that. Which is the one that you'd find mainly in a Pisco Sour, so a Quebranta grape, which is a big, bold bastard of a grape. Super powerful, and it needs to be to cut through, to have a presence amongst the lime and sugar and egg white and things like that.
We're going to talk about a Pisco Sour later, so...
Yeah, sorry, jumped the gun. So that's Pisco Puro. You can use any of the grapes, but that's the main one that they use to make a Puro. Then you've got Acholado, which is a blend of different grape Piscos. So, and normally it's only 2 varieties, a non-aromatic and an aromatic. But I've tasted ones that go up to like 7 varieties. It's super complex. It's amazing.
Are there just hundreds of distillers in Peru? Or
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Mainly around like the Ica region. Whole bunch. Yeah, loads.
all creating a different style?
Absolutely.
Or do they keep to the original?
There's a few innovators.
I guess, is there original? The
Yeah.
original Pisco and then all the other...
I think the Quebranta would have been, that was the first grape that sort of took hold, so that would be the original. And there's a whole bunch of funky people, like the people I went to see, and they're doing some amazing things, and they're drawing inspiration from other spirits production and putting it into their own thing. But obviously there's some strict rules, so they're quite limited.
So tell us about the Pisco Sour, because I think that is the most well-known drink
Absolutely.
of the Pisco oeuvre.
Yeah. I have to Google that word. So the Pisco Sour was actually invented by an American dude called Victor Morris, who has the same birthday as me.
That's why you were drawn to Pisco.
That's why, and we're actually in the 100-year anniversary of the Pisco Sour is this year, because it was created in 1916
Oh, fantastic.
in Peru, in Lima, in a bar called Morris's Bar, because he wasn't very original. He's like, Morris's Bar. My name's Morris. And because it was like during Prohibition, so all these Americans were like, I need to get my fix. Because Pisco had already been popular in California way before that, during the 1800s, because of the Californian gold rush. And the Pisco Punch predates the Pisco Sour, which everyone doesn't really realize.
Is the Pisco Punch still made?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It was invented by a guy called Pisco John, even though his name was Duncan, but he had some strange nickname. Yeah. So
because he drank a lot of Pisco.
yeah, I think so. It just blew up. You can't really go to San Francisco without trying one. That's where it was born. And we have a whole bunch here, but still the Pisco Sour is the one, because it's like the national drink of Peru. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but Victor Morris, unfortunately, he died in like 1929 because he wasn't very, I'm not sure why, he wasn't very healthy.
He drank too many Pisco Sours, maybe.
Yeah, I think and ate too much chicharrones. Mm-hmm. So he died, but he had a load of disciples from his bar, and they sort of spread around Lima, and soon enough it was like every hotel bar or little bodega or cocktail bar on a corner, that was their signature drink, Pisco Sour.
And what exactly is in a Pisco Sour?
A Pisco Sour is Pisco, generally the Quebranta, Puro. Something else can get lost, the aromatic, delicate varieties. Then you got lime, sugar syrup, and egg white. That's like its most basic form, and it's very simple ratio. The original is 3-1-1, so 3 parts Pisco, 1 part sugar syrup, and 1 part lime juice. But we had some of like 4-1-1, and we fell over. Unfortunately, in the UK, you kind of have to stick to the 2-1-1 because of sort of licenses and regulations, and you want people to enjoy themselves, not just fall over.
I assume it's a very popular drink here.
Yeah.
Is it hard to get those Pisco Sour lovers to try other Pisco drinks?
No, I think if you just have to have some confidence. Because again, you're always going to know more than them about what Pisco is, because no one knows what it is. So you go, if you like that, try this. And they try that, and you get their trust, and it's great. Or sometimes I even bring them a taste. I'm like, look, just please try this, because I just want...
Or the drink?
Occasionally, not the Quebranta. I bring like the aromatic varieties and say, look, taste this. It tastes,
Do they ever drink it neat?
Yeah, they kind of... Their eyes start watering. But yeah.
I meant in Peru.
Oh.
I meant in Peru, sorry.
Yeah, we actually tried some straight off the still, like the heads, which you're not really supposed to do, but we dabbed it, because I think if you drink it, you can go blind.
Well,
Yeah, it was fine.
Or mad, like absinthe, I guess.
I think that happened, Yeah.
Well, tell me about your trip to Peru, since you've mentioned it so many times.
It was.
Was this a first jaunt for you?
Absolutely, yeah. I've been to Brazil a couple of times, never been to Peru. I fell in love with this concept when I started working here, but I always wanted to go. Like the owners and the executive chefs and everyone went in the beginning, and I was stuck here like, what's going on? So finally met an amazing lady called Natasha, who is the brand ambassador for Machu Pisco here in the UK. And I met her here, and she was very quiet, and she was like, hello. And then we started talking. I tried her Pisco, and then we just sort of built this working relationship and became really good friends. She ended up sending us to Peru to meet the producer, her cousin, who's called Melanie. And I think she was named one of the top 10 female distillers of this year, which is great. And they have 2 distilleries in Peru, which we visited both.
It's a great name.
Machu Pisco, right? Everyone's like, Machu Picchu, like the place. Yeah. But she makes a whole crazy range of different piscos. So she makes puros from pretty much each of the grape varieties. She makes a nachalado called La Diablada, and they also have single varieties of that as well. And then the best pisco I ever tried in my life, which is called Nusta, which I think is the first sort of luxury pisco there is.
What makes it luxury?
So they do a late harvest. They harvest late. So they pick the grapes when they're super, super ripe, full of sugar. And they make a Mosto Verde. So that's the third type we didn't mention before. It's they halt the fermentation process early, so there's a whole bunch of residual sugar in there. And then they distill that, and what you get is just mad, green, fresh flavors.
And what proof is it?
Oh my god, that's a test. I think that one was like 43, something like that.
So it's pretty high.
Yeah, totally. But you have to use a whole load more grapes because you're halting fermentation early.
Okay.
So you need to get to the required strength, you need to use a whole bunch more. So it's pretty timely and costly process, but we got to try it there and it's amazing.
And what do you feel you learned from the trip after about Pisco?
I learned
drinking in Nikkei.
that Pisco Sours taste way better in Peru for a few reasons. We met a guy who used to make Pisco Sours for Ernest Hemingway. I didn't understand a word he was saying, but I kind of got...
His drink was good.
I was watching him, like, he kept putting more Pisco in. I was like, oh my god. He did like a 4-1-1 ratio. Also, they use different limes to us. They use key limes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, which are those tiny things with seeds, but they're just so much more punchy.
We have this in the States.
Yeah. And I'm trying to work out a way of getting them here without... I mean, we have key limes here, but it's super expensive. I was thinking of doing maybe a blend of Persian to key limes. The guy also did something to his sugar syrup, which I thought I understood. He puts orange zest and cinnamon in there. And they blend it as well as we do, which is good, because I was like, are they going to shake it? Are they going to blend it? And he blended it. I was like, oh, okay, Ernest Hemingway dude blends it. Seal of approval.
So it's always blended, not shaken.
We saw a couple of people shaking it, but it's kind of half and half there, yeah.
All right. How do they shake here, or do they blend here?
We blend here, because we have to make about, I think the actual figure is 1 million a week.
No.
Yeah, that's a joke.
Really?
No, not really.
Oh.
So it's like 1,000 or something. It's still a lot.
Like, that is a lot.
That's a lot.
Well,
Yeah,
you guys are doing so well
Yeah,
here.
I know.
Tell me a little bit about you, and how did you find yourself loving Pisco? I heard through the grapevine that you have a Brazilian father.
Yes.
Yes, and that's why you have this fabulous Fabiano name.
Yeah. I can't dance though.
So I would think that you would really be more of a cachaça guy.
I was.
You were.
Totally, yeah. I remember my first job interview for a head bartender role in a bar called Smoke Bar in Tooting. And the guy was like, I was so nervous. He was like, what kind of drinks would you recommend for a group of, guys coming after finishing work in their suits, whatever? I was like, I would recommend a round of caipirinhas. And I thought, that's a good answer. And he seemed to look at me and go, yeah, that's cool. And then he said, what would you recommend for a group of ladies coming in for like a Hindu or something? And I said, raspberry caipirinhas. All I knew, I just was caipirinha. I was just obsessed with cachaça.
So every answer was caipirinha.
Yeah, just different variations. Yeah, mango one? What? It's not a caipirinha bar. I somehow got the job. I don't know how. He saw something crazy. Yeah, so totally. Cachaça was the one. But when I actually went to Brazil to meet my dad, I made him a caipirinha as sort of, language barrier. Cheers, Dad. And he sort of looked at me like, what the hell is that? And started drinking the cachaça straight. So I was like, that's where I get it from. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, super nice.
And so after, where was it? Tuning back? No.
Yeah, Tuning back.
After
Yeah, nice
Tuning
one.
Back?
I opened a bar with my cousin, James Monero, and his business partner, Amici. A bar called Monero's in East London, which we were open for I worked there for about 3 years, and it was just amazing. We were open till 5 in the morning, East London. So all the local bars around there, and I'm sure it's super rich for bars. There's Kulukule and Happiness Forgets and all these amazing places. And they would come in to see us after their shift because we were open late and we had a cool door policy.
That's a great compliment.
I know, but I didn't realize who they were. And I started going to see their bars before I started my shift because I started quite late and they'd come afterwards, and we built up relationships. I was like, oh my god. And that's where I really started to get inspired. I was like, okay, I need to step up my game and, learn more. And I have a sort of a niche because they all have their own, specialties and things. I thought, okay. Later on, I realized that would be South American spirits, namely Pisco. And then during that time, after I learned all these guys, where they began, I heard of a group called Rushmore or Match Group. And they own like Milk and Honey and Giant Robot. So I did a few shifts there and I was like, whoa, I need to learn a lot. But their training program was so good. And I realized I was a bit of a nerd because in school I was rubbish. And I was like, what's that? What's geography? I don't care. But I just really fell in love with the whole... I got to stop saying fall in love. I enjoyed...
It's nice to fall in love, so...
I keep doing it every day. The whole... Because alcohol has everything. I mean, not alcohol. That sounds a bit weird. But you look at a bottle and you think, okay, there's a bottle. But if you really look at it and you think, okay, there's a story behind this. And everything has stories, and it's great. It's got some geography, it's got like history, it's got science, it's got art, on the label and everything. So
well, that's what I love doing. What I do,
yeah,
interviewing
totally.
all of you, because I think everything has a story.
Yeah.
Everyone has a great story of how they got to where they are. How are they behind that bar? What alcohol do they love? Why do they love it? Why do they represent it?
Yeah.
For me, it's really interesting, and That's why I started the podcast.
Which is amazing. It's good to be on it.
So you're my first Pisco lover.
Oh, cool.
Which is fantastic.
There's a bunch of Chilean Pisco lovers.
Oh yeah, back to Chilean Pisco.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch in London, and there's a guy called Chris Dennis, who's like Chilean Pisco guy, and there's also a guy called Guy who likes Chilean Pisco. But there's no real Peruvian. I mean, obviously there's other restaurants that they promote it heavily. There's like Miguel, who's a bar manager of ceviche, who's a great guy. But yeah, I just thought, I need to push this. I need to build this category, but it's quite difficult because what I realized when I was in Peru is that the Pisco producers, that's the head chef shouting, the Peruvians are quite competitive, and it would be nice to see people working together more to get more brands here to push the category as a whole.
You mean within Peru? The distillers, the bartenders, they're the competitive
Not really
ones?
the bartenders, but the distillers in like a kind of healthy way, I guess. It's good, but I think to really push it here.
How much comes over here?
Well, more and more now.
More and more.
Before, there was just one bottle of Aber Pisco on every sort of bar shelf, and no one really knew what it was, which is Chilean. And now new brands keep being brought to me here. And it's quite funny, sometimes people bring me a brand, and they don't know about Pisco. And it's like, do your research, like, you know where you're coming, you need to try and sell this. And they're like, oh, Pisco's Pisco. No, it's not.
So how many different Piscos are here?
We've got, because we have a few different variants of the same brand. So I think we've got about 6 or 7 brands here. We've got a few variations of
And
each.
do you ever do tastings?
Absolutely, yeah. We do masterclasses, tastings. Normally, I just do like spontaneous thing. I find someone who's slightly interested in Pisco, and I go and irritate them for about half an hour. Try this. We're opening, fingers crossed, a Pisco bar downstairs. So you know where you were? There's like a raised dining area. That whole area will be a Pisco bar.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm in talks with Lizzie, who is like the brains of the Machu Pisco organization, to try and get more of their variants over here, and working with Natasha and everyone to just try and build something really big, so become more of a destination bar to come and learn all about Pisco without trying to bore people.
Sounds like that's the natural progression, definitely.
Yeah, I'd hope so.
For Pisco.
Yeah, it'd be amazing.
You're making me thirsty.
Okay, good.
So
Let's have some Pisco.
Let's make a drink.
Let's do it. Blenders.
It was fantastic to have Fabiano on the program today. Unfortunately, you can't visit him at Chotto Matte anymore, as he's off doing his own thing. But don't worry, I will let you know his news when he's ready to reveal it. A few weeks visiting family in Philadelphia always equals a stop in one of my favorite restaurants, The Hav, headed by award-winning chef Michael Solomonov. The drinks are just as great as the food, so this time I made a date to sit down with their bar manager, Jeff Bartosh. Come back next week to find out what they've done to the Israeli national drink to make it so addictive. Until next time, bottoms up.
For more information and links to everything you've heard about, plus a bit more, please visit bestbitsworldwide.com. Thanks for listening to Best Sips Worldwide, a spin-off of Best Bits Worldwide. Always remember the wise words of Oscar Wilde: all things in moderation, including moderation, and never drink and drive. Okay, I said that last part. Theme music is by Steven Shapiro and used with permission. You'll find me at the bar